Your Honor, for purposes of expediting, does the court wish for me to go through the foundation of the doctor's education, training, and background and experience, which is going to take a minute?
Yeah, no, just focus on the foundation for the dog bites and focus on the foundation for what's been termed to be perhaps biomechanical engineering evidence, those two areas. And if there is support or methodology in Dr. Laposata's resume to point to exactly where that is. Okay? And I expect this whole voir dire should take no more than 15 minutes.
I'll do my best, Your Honor. Doctor, could you please state your name for the record? Spell your last name into the record, please.
Yes, Dr. Elizabeth Laposata. That's spelled Laposata.
Dr. Laposata, what do you do for a living?
I'm a medical doctor subspecializing in forensic pathology.
Dr. Laposata, I'm going to move very, very quickly past the bulk of your training and experience over decades. I'm going to ask you a couple of quick questions. Where did you get your medical degree?
University of Maryland School of Medicine.
And do you have any subordinate degrees to your medical degree?
Yes, I have board certifications in anatomic and forensic pathology.
How long have you had those board certifications?
Like 35, 40 years.
Have you ever worked as a medical examiner in any capacity?
Yes, I have.
Have you ever worked as a chief medical examiner for any agency or governmental agency or state?
Yes, I have.
Describe that for the court, please.
I was a chief medical examiner for the state of Rhode Island for 12 years.
How many autopsies would you say in general that you have conducted yourself?
Over 3,000.
How many autopsies in your experience as a supervisor in one capacity or another would you say you've supervised over your tenure?
Over 7,000.
Of those 7,000 that you have supervised, have any of those dealt with motor vehicle incidents?
Many.
Have any of those dealt with motor vehicle and pedestrian incidents?
Many.
Give me an idea, if you have a number in mind, how many motor vehicle pedestrian autopsies you have been involved with, either directly or from a supervisory standpoint.
Hundreds, over 500 at least.
Do you have a significant background and training in the cause and manner of death?
Yes, I do.
Is that the main goal or the main job or duty performed by a medical examiner?
Yes, it is.
Is it also significant in terms of supervising other subordinate medical examiners who may work under your charge?
Yes, you have to make sure they're doing it right.
Is there a methodology that you have employed and that is standard in the industry to employ, including differential diagnoses and inferential thinking in terms of coming to conclusions related to manner and cause of death?
Yes.
Can you explain that for the court in brief, please? I know you probably have a very lengthy explanation.
Okay.
Do it as briefly as you can, with being as succinct as you can.
Certainly. To determine cause of manner and death, we look at scene investigation, autopsy findings, police and witness statements, and medical history. And using that information, we come up with a differential diagnosis or a list of things that might have happened to that person to cause them to die. And from that list, then we see where all the science and all the data, which one it supports. So we've looked at several different things. I always told my staff, I said, how can we be wrong? What else could this be? So you have to make what in medicine is called a differential diagnosis and then see what the facts support.
Did you employ a differential diagnosis in this case?
Yes, I did.
Do you have to be at the scene in order to understand or analyze information that you get in a police report or photographs or things of that nature?
No, then we use the police investigation and scene investigation, crime lab reports, photographs taken by the crime lab, by the police at the scene.
Have you qualified as an expert forensic and anatomical pathologist in other courts in Massachusetts and other states?
Yes, I have.
Approximately how many times would you say you've qualified?
Hundreds.
I want to talk for a specific for a second about a specific area of interest for the court. Were you provided information and photographs of John O'Keefe's arm and his arm injuries included with the rest of the autopsy information that you received?
Yes.
Were you asked to make a determination about the nature of the wounds specific to his right arm? I know that there's other injuries to Mr. O'Keefe, but I'd like to relegate your attention to the right arm.
Yes, absolutely. That's what the forensic pathologist does.
Without telling me what your opinion was, were you able to come to an opinion or conclusion about the source of those injuries?
Yes, I was.
What methodology did you employ to come to that opinion or conclusion, or those opinions and conclusions?
My experience and knowledge and training, along with the appearance of the wounds on the right arm, which fit a pattern, and then knowing that it fits a pattern, then I can try to look for, okay, what is the item that caused this pattern? And that would be part of the differential diagnosis that I've used for many, many years in making diagnoses and determinations.
Have you ever been trained in pattern recognition?
Yes.
In what capacity?
Oh, as a forensic pathologist and medical examiner, a large amount of our work has to do with recognizing pattern injuries, because that's so important, because it gives us an idea of what might have caused that injury. And then that's clearly of a lot of importance to the police and the investigators as they're trying then to say, well, what could have caused that injury? And so the forensic pathologist could say, well, I think it was X or Y. Then they can carry out their investigation armed with that information as to what might have caused the injury on the body.
Is there such a thing in the world of pathologists as medical literature or academic literature that deals with pattern recognition?
Yes.
Are you familiar with some or most of those publications?
Absolutely.
Have you ever yourself taught classes on pattern recognition?
Yes.
At what level? High school, graduate school,
at the
medical school?
medical school level.
How often have you taught courses on pattern recognition?
Oh, at least a handful.
When was the last time you taught a course in pattern recognition?
Let's see, last month.
Do any of the courses that you've either taken, well, let's take them one at a time. Have any of the courses that you've ever taken dealt with wound pattern recognition as it relates to animal wounds?
Courses that I've taken?
That you have taken?
It's part of our basic training and understanding of a forensic pathologist. The board exams we take test for that. Those injuries are described in our basic forensic pathology and medicine textbooks. They appear continually in our medical and scientific journals.
Is that an important skill set to develop, wound pattern recognition as it pertains to animals as a forensic pathologist?
Absolutely.
Do any of those academic courses that you've either taken or reference works that you just referred to, do any of those deal with dog bites and claw marks specifically?
Oh, yes, they do.
In the course or courses that you have taught related to wound pattern recognition, have you ever taught on the subject of dog bite wounds and the recognition of dog bite wounds?
Yes, I have.
When was the last time you did that?
Let's see, it would be in the course in the medical school. Would have been several years ago.
Doctor, with regard to staying with dog bite wounds specifically, have you ever performed an autopsy that specifically dealt with dog bite wounds, known dog bite wounds?
Yes.
So you've seen them in person?
Yes, I have.
Have you ever been qualified in any court in the land, state or federal court, on the issue of wound pattern recognition as it pertains to dog bites?
Yes.
When was that?
The last one I can recall was a federal case involving questions of a police dog.
Did you engage, in that case, did you engage in a differential diagnosis to determine, in your opinion and conclusion, your expert opinion and conclusion, the source of the wounds that you saw?
Yes.
Did the court qualify you to speak on that issue in court?
Yes.
Did you, in fact, testify in furtherance of your opinions and conclusions in that case?
I did.
I want to turn for a second to motor vehicle accidents or motor vehicle incidents. Do you also, some of the same questions, have you also performed autopsies on known motor vehicle pedestrian incidents?
Yes.
How many times would you say you've performed an autopsy on those issues?
Hundreds, maybe even 1,000.
Is that a relatively common occurrence, as sad as it may be, motor vehicle pedestrian incidents in the field of forensic pathology?
Yes, it is, unfortunately.
Have you performed autopsies personally as well as supervised autopsies on motor vehicle pedestrian incidents?
Yes.
And what methodology do you employ in furtherance of coming to opinions and conclusions regarding cause and manner of death specific to motor vehicle pedestrian incidents?
Mm-hmm. Well, we look at the scene investigation. We look at what the motor vehicle looked like. We look at the hospital records, the autopsy, and then trying to understand how the injuries that the pedestrian sustained, what those mechanisms were, and how the injuries show that that person interacted with the motor vehicle.
In doing so, in coming up with injury mechanism analysis, is it important to look at and analyze the actual vehicle that is allegedly involved?
Yes, you want to look at photographs of that or see it in person.
Is that part of the normal methodology that is employed in the field?
Yes, you must look at the photographs. You must see what the vehicle looks like.
Do you also look at the other side of that handshake? In other words, look at the body of the individual that was, in your case, killed, the decedent, in order to marry the two and determine whether or not the cause and manner of death had something to do with the motor vehicle, a motor vehicle impact?
Absolutely.
Describe that for us, please. What are some of the things that you look for that's part of the normal methodology that a forensic pathologist employs?
Well, when we examine a fatality from a motor vehicle, we want to try to understand what led up to it, how the impact occurred, and then what happened after. So we would study information about the injuries to see if we can relate them to certain pattern injuries that would be on the car. There are also evidence of transfer of energy and injuries that can result from the transfer of energy. So using the body, looking at the scene and the vehicle, understanding the motions of the vehicle and how they would have produced or would not have produced certain injuries on the body.
I'm going to take them one at a time. With regard to animal wounds or dog bites, were you able, in this case, using differential diagnoses, using inferential thinking, and using the skills that you've developed over decades of your education, training, and background, were you able to, without telling me what the conclusion is, were you able to come to a conclusion or opinion as to whether or not the wounds that you saw on John O'Keefe's right arm were consistent or inconsistent with a dog bite or claw marks?
I was able to come to a definite scientific conclusion.
And is that conclusion to a reasonable degree of medical certainty?
Yes.
Is it to a reasonable degree of scientific certainty?
Yes, it is.
Is it consistent with the training and methodology that you've employed over decades?
It is.
I'm going to ask you the same series of questions with regard to the motor vehicle incident. Did you review the autopsy report in an effort to look at John O'Keefe's entire body and all of the injuries that he sustained, not simply his right arm?
I looked at everything.
In doing so, were you able to come to an opinion or a conclusion as to the mechanism of injury and whether or not his injuries in total were consistent or inconsistent with a motor vehicle incident or impact?
I was able to come to a scientific conclusion.
And without telling me what that scientific conclusion is at this point, did you employ the same methodology that you've explained to the court earlier concerning differential diagnoses, inferential thinking, and decades of training, the education, training, and background that you've described for the court in coming to your conclusions about whether or not the cause and manner of death was consistent or inconsistent with a motor vehicle impact?
Yes.
Your Honor, is there any area that I have not covered to the court's satisfaction to this assumption?
So I'll let Mr. Brennan ask questions. I may have a couple of questions.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Dr. Laposata.
Good afternoon.
If we could start with dog bites.
Yes.
Did you have any specific training in wound pattern recognition regarding dog bites?
Yes, it's in our literature standard textbook. It's standard information that is needed to be a forensic pathologist.
When did you receive training regarding pattern recognition of dog bites?
Beginning when I took my board, starting in 1983.
And what did that entail?
It entailed reading literature. It entailed reading the standard forensic pathology and medicine textbooks. And it is a sub-part of understanding pattern injuries. Dog bite injuries are described in all our journals and all our standard forensic textbooks.
Other than reading about it when you were studying for your boards, did you have any practical experience where you were engaging in the field in pattern recognition analysis regarding dog bites?
Yes, I've had many cases where there have been dog bite injuries.
When you were studying for your boards, were you doing that, or after you completed your boards?
I'm telling you that that it's such a basic part that during studying for boards, it's a section that we study. And I, of course, had many cases since then.
Did you receive any education past reading literature for the boards, where you took classes, seminars, where it taught specifically wound pattern recognition regarding dog bites?
It's all part of wound pattern recognition. It's usually included in literature. If there are lectures about patterned injuries, it's a subset of pattern injuries like hammer injuries, like gunshot wounds, like baseball bat injuries. There's a huge number of types of patterned injuries that are part and parcel of what a medical examiner has to understand and diagnose.
Do you remember taking any specific classes or any specific training about wound pattern recognition relative to specifically dog bites?
Yes, it's in all the literature that I keep up with.
Did you take any training or did you attend any classes that involved wound pattern recognition of dog bites?
Yes, it's often included in our seminars and case reports.
Do you list any of those classes or seminars on your resume?
That I took? No.
Can you identify one of those classes, where it was, when it was, who taught it, what the name of it was, regarding wound pattern recognition relative to dog bites?
I can't give you a specific time and date.
Can you remember the name of the last class or seminar that you took or completed that has to do with wound pattern recognition relative to dog bites?
I can't recall.
Is there anything in your report that identifies any of your specific education or training on wound pattern recognition as it relates to dog bites?
It's in my CV. It's basic knowledge that a forensic pathologist has to have.
I will ask you about the CV, but Dr. Laposata, I just wanted to ask you about your report first. Is there anything in your report that points to any specific training
In the report that I wrote on this case?
In your report relative to wound pattern recognition as to dog bites, is there anything in your report that identifies that for us?
In my report, I put together the case of what happened to Mr. O'Keefe.
Okay. As far as your experience, though, do you ever make any note in your report about your specific experience and training about wound pattern recognition for dog bites in your report?
No, it's not appropriate.
In your CV, is there any way you can point to us where you had specific training for wound pattern recognition relative to dog bites, where we can see that on your CV?
No, it doesn't say dog bite training specifically, no.
Do you have anything on your CV that specifically talks about wound pattern recognition for animals?
Those are usually classified within other pattern recognition.
Do you have anything specific that would alert us in your CV that you've had such specific training on wound pattern recognition for animals?
Other than I've passed my board exams and have practiced for 40 years.
Have you provided a list of cases where you have testified in court specifically about wound pattern recognition of dog bites?
I don't know if I have given a list. I don't keep those kinds of lists.
You mentioned one case about law enforcement dogs in federal court. When was that case?
Several years ago.
How long would you say, if you had a guess?
How long was it ago?
Yes, please.
A couple years, around COVID time.
Did you testify in that case about law enforcement police dogs?
I testified about an individual who had injuries, and there was a question as to whether Canine Caper, who was the dog's name, inflicted any injuries on this person.
And this was in Boston federal court?
Springfield? Yeah, Boston, right.
Is there a difference between law enforcement dog bites and domestic dog bites?
They have the same kind of dog jaw.
So you would say
they're taught differently, obviously.
Would the wound pattern recognition be the same or different if you were looking at it from a law enforcement dog perspective or a domestic dog perspective?
The dog would be the same.
Do you have any other cases that you've testified about wound pattern recognition relative to dog bites?
I've testified in hundreds of cases. I can't say that I remember any particular ones.
Would you be able to identify any of those for us today?
No, too many.
I'll ask you about accident reconstruction experience. And I mean this respectful. You don't have a biomechanical or a medical engineering type background, do you?
No, I'm not a mechanical engineer.
You're not certified by ACTAR or any of those type of organizations, are you, doctor?
No, I relate the injuries on the body to the motor vehicle.
Have you ever been to a car collision scene and investigated a car collision scene firsthand?
Yes.
And when you've done that, do you have a chance to look at all of the physical materials, the properties?
Well, when I go to a scene of a motor vehicle fatality, I look at the pieces that are scattered around. I look at the body. I look at blood stain patterns. I look at damage to the car. And then the body would go back for the examination at the medical examiner's office, and there would be further examination of the scene by accident reconstructionists and examination of the automobile by specialists who could figure out what motor vehicles do. So it's a part of correlating the injuries to the vehicle.
You've never written an accident reconstruction report yourself, have you?
No, that's not what I do.
I understand. In this case, what materials did you look at? Because I don't think in your report mentions the materials that you studied. What materials did you study as the basis for any potential opinions regarding accident reconstruction?
Well, so you would like for me to tell you everything I studied in this case?
Yes.
I have my list here. Should I read
That's fine
from
by
that?
me.
Okay. I studied the autopsy report, neuropathology report, toxicology, and associated paperwork from the medical examiner's office. I studied 104 autopsy and neuropathology photographs, 70 additional autopsy photos, taken by Trooper Watson. I studied Mr. O'Keefe's medical records from the Canton Fire Department and EMS run sheet. I studied the Good Samaritan medical records that also included 35 photographs of the body. I looked at evidence of Mr. O'Keefe's clothing, blue jeans, t-shirt, sweatshirt, boxers, and sneakers. I'm sorry. I looked at photographs that were taken at the crime lab of various pieces of plastic, black, red, and clear. I studied photographs of the outside of Ms. Reed's SUV as it was parked at the police garage. I studied the Canton Police incident report, about 100 photographs taken by Canton Police of the outside scene. So that gave me a very good idea of what happened to Mr. O'Keefe.
Were you involved in the case Cromwell versus Daniel Tompkins?
Remind me about that. I've been involved in hundreds of cases.
Yes, you have. This case was in Franklin County Superior Court. It was a case where you had an opportunity to present testimony and regarding blood spatter, which you have been qualified expert for. I'm sorry.
Well, that doesn't quite say what I did, but I remember the case you're talking about.
Did you attempt, or was there an attempt to have you qualified to talk about accident reconstruction in that case?
No, I'm not an accident reconstructionist.
And do you remember whether or not there was an attempt that was denied to try to have you talk about accident reconstruction in that case?
I have no idea. I'm not an accident reconstructionist.
Okay. Do you have anything on your CV specifically that offers any background on accident reconstruction or accident reconstruction type classes or seminars?
I don't think so.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Laposata.
No, you're welcome.
So can I just ask Dr. Laposata about, you said you've been involved in autopsies with dog bites.
Yes.
How many?
I've done thousands of cases, probably 50 or so. It's not always the cause of death. And then I've supervised maybe 75 more where that dog bites were involved in the case.
When was the last one?
Let's see, probably 2 years ago.
Okay. Any questions based on my questions? All right. You are all set and ask you to step down, Dr. Laposata. We'll get to you sometime this afternoon.
Okay. Thank you, Your Honor.
I do want to give everybody a break, including counsel. Can we do less than 5-minute arguments on this?